Well, good morning here on the East Coast and good morning on the West Coast. And if you're in Europe, it's probably good afternoon. In Asia, I don't, that's hard to figure out. But good morning, world. It's Mike Dotterer, and we're back on the dot after a hiatus, you could say. This is our first on the dot, and it's really a special on the dot because we're going to do this every Wednesday. And if more people want to hear it more often, we're going to do it twice a week. But we're calling this Little Text on the Dot. And I'm going to bring in my good friend, John Simone, and his nickname is Little Text. And we'll get into why many are probably saying, what's Little Text mean? But before I bring him on, and again, the show is Little Text on the Dot. I want to wish happy birthday to some of my friends out there, and when John comes on, he can do that too. But I'm gonna just wish happy birthday to Stanford Hall of Famer who lives in Montreal and also in California, Alex Karakazov. Alex, happy birthday, my friend! One of the great offensive linemen in Stanford football history. And just a great guy and a great businessman. And I need to get in touch with Alex. Happy birthday, Alex. Happy birthday to another great Stanford defensive player, Kylie Wong, who played in the National Football League. Happy birthday, Kylie. Happy birthday to Rhonda Nelson, who was one of my dental assistants working on my teeth many years ago. Happy birthday, Rhonda. Happy birthday to Ramsey Beatty, who's the son of my teammate at Stanford, former Miami Dolphin, Greg Beatty. Ramsey was also an outstanding footballer. And happy birthday to Ramsey. And happy birthday to Kevin Franzen. John Simone knows probably Kevin Franzen. He played a professional baseball with the Giants, and it's his birthday today. Happy birthday to my two-sport brother from another mother, Mark Dunlap. Mark was a great two-sport player, baseball, football in the Bay Area. Happy birthday to Mark. Happy birthday to Dulcie Dazone. Dulcie, we worked together many years ago in the Silicon Valley, and she's a great lady. Happy birthday, Dulcie. And happy birthday to Dr. Trina Wiggins, who I argue she is, for her age, and we're not going to talk, age is just a number, but for her age, there's no one that's in better shape than Dr. Trina Wiggins. And she's written a book about how sugar can kill you. So just go on Amazon and type Dr. Trina Wiggins and her book, which is a great book to warn us about the danger of sugar. I mean, we talk about drugs and all these things. Well, we have an epidemic in America, which is called diabetes. And Dr. Trina is doing a great job. So happy birthday, Dr. Trina. I hope everybody buys your book and studies it because it's a great book. And she's been on the dot before. Last year, she was on the dot. So you can search her show when we had her on. She was fantastic. And let's see here. Happy birthday to Balaji Srinivasan. Balaji Srinivasan is a Stanford graduate and a very intelligent man. Balaji Srinivasan, and he predicted, I think a month or two ago, he said Bitcoin is going to go into the stratosphere. And if you didn't chance, the Bitcoin conference, a Bitcoin 2024 or 2023 conference in Miami. And it was fantastic. Tulsi Gabbard was there. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was there. Some celebrities talking about the future of Bitcoin and how it's going to help make our world a better place. So Balaji knows about. If you Google him and type in Bitcoin, you'll get his prediction. So anyway, enough of that. Those are all the birthdays. And now we're going to bring on the man of the hour, Little Text, John Simone. John, welcome. You're on the dot. Oh, I got to unmute him. Here we go. There we go, John.
I'm glad I'm finally on. It's been a long wait, but we finally accomplished it, I guess.
Well, John, I want to thank you first for encouraging me to get back on the dot and say, hey, Dot, we got a lot to share. And you, I mean, I could just sit by the campfire, and listen to the stories about baseball and your father and my father and how we're connected. And so why don't you just share with our audience, you and I both born in 1960,
Yep.
and I'm sure we met back then. We don't remember, but we met back then here in upstate New York. So, John, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how we got together, and your amazing baseball background with your father and you, and world championships with the Toronto Blue Jays. So, take it away.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we've known each other all our lives, and through our dads, who were childhood friends, believe it or not. Your dad and my dad played baseball together at probably 9 or 10 years old at Old Schiller Park on the north side, and my father always tells the story that he remembers your dad. He used to call him this pudgy little fat kid. Came over to Schiller Park. He was 3 years younger than my dad and all his friends. And he said he wanted to play baseball. And they said, hey, we need a catcher. Go catch, which back then there was no equipment. They were poor. It was during the Depression, and they were lucky to have a baseball. And they put Dutch behind your dad behind the plate, and he threw out like 3 or 4 guys. And my father said, you're on the team. So, 10 years later, they were still playing. Your dad went to shock the world and went to CBA, where I went and all my kids went later on. But my dad went to Old North High, but they remained friends throughout, rekindled a relationship in the 60s when your dad ended his baseball career in Syracuse. And my dad started his baseball career as an athletic trainer. And then obviously kept in touch over the years. And when your dad came back to Syracuse before he passed away, it was like they've seen each other probably, forever, even though they were apart for so many years. And I know your dad really appreciated all his neighborhood friends and my dad being with him at the end.
Yeah, it's great memories. I mean, your father was the best. I mean, if you come to Syracuse, the Syracuse, it's now the Syracuse Mets, and it's the AAA team for the New York Mets. And, it's the New York Mets have a great storied history. And AAA is for many of you that maybe don't know baseball, it's just one step from the big leagues. And if you ever come here and you drive to the stadium, it's Tex Simone. Is it Drive?
Tex Simone Drive, yeah.
Tex Simone Drive.
Yeah, when they named the street after him, the mayor and everybody was there. He thought usually when you do this, you're dead. He goes, you guys don't want to tell me something here or what? But he was very proud of that. He's very proud of keeping baseball in Syracuse for the many years at Old MacArthur Stadium, and then building that new stadium, which is now over almost 30 years old, down at the same spot as he grew up on the north side. And he just loved this area, and got the nickname Tex somewhere. Maybe your dad gave it to him. Who knows? Playing in Schiller Park. But growing up, I was either Tex Jr. or Little Tex. So it kind of stuck with a lot of my friends. When I see him still today, they call me Tex or Tex Jr. or whatever. But it's something to be proud of, like, your dad and his nicknames, and your grandfather, who was also very instrumental in a lot of what my dad did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember my first memory of baseball was, I think, 1962, and John F. Kennedy was the president. The Cuban Missile Crisis was going on about that time, and I think my mother brought me to MacArthur Park, and I just remember sitting behind home plate, and there's all these things happening, and you were probably sitting right next to me or somewhere.
Probably, yeah. Definitely, yeah. Those were some lean years of baseball in Syracuse, and the teams that we had here with affiliations with the Mets and the Senators, and then the Twins and the Senators before they hooked up with the Tigers in the 60s, and then the Yankees later on.
Well, we want to just let everyone know this portion of Little Text on the Dot is brought to you by a field that is right behind John. That field there, John. Why don't you tell a little bit about your company?
Yeah, right now I work for a company called Sports Fields Inc., and we build natural grass and synthetic fields around the country. That picture behind me is, believe it or not, in Vero Beach, Florida, the home of the former home of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it's owned by Major League Baseball now. And little by little, they've been replacing some of the fields down there where a lot of kids are playing for tournaments and things like that. So that's a field we did last year, and we do fields all over the country, from Arizona to Oregon to Mid-Atlantic states and Maryland. We have affiliated with Cal Ripken Foundation and do a lot of his fields around the country. We're doing a field for Derek Jeter Foundation this summer in Michigan, his hometown, and we love doing it. We love the finishing the product, and Sports Fields Inc. is the place to go if you need a field.
Well, I'm going to type in here. This is the great thing. I can create a little banner for you to just flash along the bottom here. Someone say, for more information on, and I call it Sports Fields
Inc. Yep.
Sports Fields Inc. Go to, and what's the, do you know what the URL is?
You got me on that one, Michael. You should have asked me before. I'll
Well,
make sure I have it next week.
No, you know what? This is why it's great. I'm just going to do a little search. Sports Field. There we go. Field Inc. Sports Field Inc.
Fields with an S.
Field Inc. Let's see if it comes up here. Inc. Okay, here we go. Sports Field Inc. There it is. Sportsfieldinc.net. Okay. That's it. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful website, by the way. Let me just copy here. And this is what I love about being on the dot here. We're going to scroll. I'll hit add the banner, and then we'll just hit show. There it is. See, we got it flashing right there. So if you want to know more about this amazing, if you have in your community, if you have a place where, you want to play more, the fields get drenched, or you're thinking about replacing it, John's the guy to call, and that's his website, sportsfieldsinc.net.
Yeah, we're based in Canton, Georgia, which is just north of Atlanta, but we have remote people all around the country, and right now is a busy time for us because that's when you do fields, especially football fields, getting ready for the football season in August. So, and
yeah,
you know that as a football guy, and the turf is a little bit different, Michael, than what you played on. Believe me.
I always tell this story. When I played my first college football game in 1979, we played in the New Orleans Superdome, and we played against Tulane. And I'll never forget running onto that field in 1979, the AstroTurf and the Superdome, and that was like playing in the greatest stadium. I mean, that was like unbelievable in 1979. Now it's not. I mean, the stadiums are, hopefully they'll break ground on that beautiful new stadium up in Buffalo. But I've heard there's a lot of controversy going on right now here in New York.
Yeah, we're hoping to get involved in that. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of looks like it's going to take a while to get built.
Yeah, but the technology's gone from. I mean, that field in 1979, I felt like I was running on concrete. I mean, literally.
And that's basically what it was. A lot of it was blacktop underneath, some concrete floors. But in today's world, there's the padding and the fibers. It's just like real grass. And the fall on the turf is a little bit easier on your body, which too late for you, but it's great for the young kids that are coming up and playing all sports, soccer, baseball, you name it.
Well, hey, we could, we were talking the other day preparing for the show, and all the amazing stories that you have, but I would be remiss because we do like to talk about what's going on in sports today. And here we are, obviously near Syracuse University, and one of the greatest athletes to ever graduate from Syracuse University. He was arguably one of the greatest football players to ever play the game. They say he was probably the greatest lacrosse player ever.
Yes.
back when they had the short sticks. I'll never forget this story. And we're talking about Jim Brown, the great Jim Brown, who just passed away less than a week ago. Last Thursday, as I like to say, he's transitioned. So Jim's spirit's here, and I got to know his daughter, one of his daughters in Los Angeles. So I'm going to send this to her, and I just want to say, my thoughts and prayers go out to you and your family on his transition. But here's a Jim Brown story, and maybe you can share your Jim Brown story. I remember listening to Dick Schaap, and Dick Schaap is the father of Jeremy Schaap. Dick went to Cornell and was at Cornell. He was the goalie for the Cornell lacrosse team, and Jim Brown was on the Syracuse lacrosse team. And this is in the mid-50s, 1950s. In any event, Jim Brown came down on a breakaway. And Dick Schaap, he said, I'm standing there getting ready to take the shot. And Jim throws the shot. And he doesn't see the ball. All he hears is, shoop. He just heard the sound of the ball going by, shoop. And it was a goal. He couldn't even see it. So that was the kind of athlete Jim Brown was. So maybe you have a great Jim Brown story.
Well, it's interesting. Your dad was good friends with Roy Simmons Jr., the longtime coach, whose dad, Roy Simmons Sr., coached lacrosse back then and had Jim. And I think Roy might have been a player on the team with Jim Brown because they were classmates. And your dad knew them all very well. And they actually told me that they changed the rule in lacrosse where you could hold the stick and the ball to your chest, which there was nobody that was going to get it away from Jim Brown. And they actually changed the rule because of Jim Brown. So, like Wilt Chamberlain and great players where they change a rule for you, you got to be pretty good. So they always told me that lacrosse was his best sport, even though he was probably one of the greatest running backs ever. He could score. And back then they delayed the game too. You scored 5 goals and you had 5-0. You stalled because there was no clock in lacrosse. So he could have scored every time he had the ball and would have scored, 500 goals in a season if he wanted to. But once they got the lead, you didn't have to score anymore. You just hold it and then actually probably just give it to Jim and say, come and get me. So, but Roy Simmons, I remember always saying nobody was as good as Jim Brown in lacrosse.
Yeah. Yeah, Roy Simmons was a fraternity brother of my father's, and another interesting man who was in the same fraternity with Roy and my dad was a famous broadcaster, American Bandstand founder, Dick Clark.
Yeah, it was a good group of people he hung out with, huh?
My dad said he would go on double dates with Dick, and Dick would drive and sit in the front seat with his date, and my dad would sit in the rumble seat in the back with his date, So I don't know.
Amazing.
Yeah. I wonder. So anyway, those were the days. So getting back, you see my background, it's a baseball field like John's background. And my background is Sunken Diamond, which is Stanford University. And Stanford's playing tonight in the Pac-12 tournament, which that's fairly new for baseball. They obviously we have it in basketball, we have it in American football, college football. Now baseball, college baseball has a league tournament. And tonight on the Pac-12 network, if you get it, Stanford is playing our arch rival, the University of California, Berkeley, at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific in the Pac-12 tournament. And Stanford's got a pretty darn good team. They won the Pac-12, and obviously in college baseball, John, the ultimate is to go to Omaha.
That's right.
World Series. And I don't know if you know, but the guy who played in the first College World Series, and I think they won, was George Herbert Bush, played at Yale.
That's right.
And he was on the first college baseball all-star or team that won the World Series. I back then I don't think they played it in Omaha though, did they?
No, I think I don't know. It's a good question. Now you played. How many times did you get to play in Omaha?
We went twice. We went back to back my junior and senior year, which was a lot of fun. It actually was heartwarming for me because we had a good football team, and you know, we had a guy named John Elway who's pretty good quarterback, and we went 4 years without going to a bowl game. And we should have gone to a bowl game. The game that the band came on the field, we were going to the Hall of Fame game, and we were all set, and we thought we won the game, and then all of a sudden, the band is on the field, as Joe Starkey said, a famous call.
I remember that game.
Joe Starkey, actually, it's interesting. Joe Starkey, he's the announcer for the Cal. He just retired this past year. It was his last year. He told me that he not only got to call that game, but guess what game? And they call that the play, which is ranked right up there with one of the greatest games of all time. Guess what game he called? And I'll give you a hint. Al Michaels. Remember Al Michaels? Or Al Michaels?
Yeah, did he Miracle on Ice?
Yes.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Yes. Joe Starkey was in Lake Placid covering the game, and somehow, I don't know what he said they called him, the radio station called him from San Francisco and said, "Hey, can you broadcast this?" And I asked Joe, I said, "Did they record it?" And he said, "No, but I mean, I would have loved to have heard his broadcast, alongside Al Michaels of the Miracle on Ice in 1980. So
now you said you were in Stanford for 4 years, and I know you played football there, and baseball, but you didn't make a bowl. How, with John Elway on your team?
It's unbelievable.
What, did they have like 5 bowls that year, or what?
Well, back then I think they had 19 bowls. Now they got 40 or 50 bowl games.
Okay,
so we would have gone to a bowl game now because we were about 500. 6-5, 5-1. I think my freshman year, we were about, but anyway, but the bottom line is we had some really good baseball teams, and we were in the beginning, Stanford, we had guys that we helped bring in Mike Messina, Jack McDowell, those guys before we got to Stanford. It was USC and Arizona State. And so in any event, that's a side note. Let's get back to your father and let everyone know you are in the process of writing an amazing book about your father, Tex.
Yeah, over the years, while he was alive, we tried to get him to write down stories and tell us some of the things, which he did, through our whole lives. And my sister and I, after he passed away, said we've got to do something to memorialize my father's life, which not just baseball, but his life growing up, and son of an Italian immigrant. My grandfather came over from Italy. An interesting story, as a stowaway on a boat to leave Italy under the Mussolini leadership, or dictatorship, I guess you could say. And then his time in the service, he joined the Army in the late 40s, early 50s, and was in the Korean War, and the people he met, and how he learned his business sense and his sports entrepreneurship, I guess you could say, in the Army, and then came home and had an opportunity to work for the AAA baseball team, which was gone for a few years, and they lost baseball. And when he came back, he basically started on the bottom as a groundskeeper, and luck would have it that the trainer had a heart attack, and he moved into the trainer's room when he was done raking the field. And before you knew it, he was sitting alongside Casey Stengel and the Mets in the 62 spring training, and then later with the Tigers and the Yankees, and then moved to the front office. So he had an incredible career, touched a lot of people's lives, had friends like your dad for life, that he, loved and cherished, and had some great stories in the book, which I'm sure you've seen, about your dad and your grandfather. And so my sister and I have a lot of photos and a lot of stories, and we commissioned a guy named William Humber, who was a good friend of the family, a Canadian writer and professor at York College in north of Toronto, and who would come down with a group of students every year. And Bill has been writing away. The pandemic kind of put us behind a little bit, but we're back on schedule and hope to finish it, maybe for the World Series this year and get this book out in October.
That's exciting. And the stories, as I said earlier in the broadcast, listening to your stories, talking about the great time, the great players, the history that your father was he was interacting with, and you got an opportunity. I mean, the stories are just amazing. And some of the stories you could share with the world, and some of the stories you probably don't want to say anything until you and I have both transitioned.
Well, it's interesting. Bill is kind of a conservative guy, writer, I guess you could say, and he said, "Nah, I don't think we can do that story, John." But I said, "Well, there could always be a sequel to the book Tex, which, I mean, it's got to be the name, right? How could you not name a book Tex after my dad?" And but there's a lot of interesting stories that things that happen, as as an athlete, and your dad being a professional baseball player, happened in that locker room, and unfortunately Jim Bouton ruined it for everybody and started telling everybody what was going on in there, and so you got to be careful. But there's like a whole nother life in sports in the clubhouse, and I think a lot of athletes today don't miss the actual playing of the game, running a football or hitting a baseball. It's what happens in the clubhouse or on the bus on the way to the ballpark. I mean, those are the funniest stories of my life that I could, there's like 3 or 4 things I'm just thinking of now as a kid, taking the bus from Syracuse to Rochester for a series, or going in between a city, Columbus to Toledo, and what would happen on the bus with whipped cream and pies and these are like some big name guys, the Ron Guidry's and the Dave Bergmans when I was growing up, and Thurman Munson's, and they were just jokesters, and it was a different time. Guys had fun. It wasn't all about making millions of dollars. It was just playing baseball and killing time before the next game.
When it was a game, right?
That's right.
Yeah, well, it was a game, but then at the same time, before Curt Flood, you were pretty much stuck with that team, John, right?
That's right. And, free agency was good for the game. Something had to be done because it wasn't fair. And it was also free agency in the minor league, or it wasn't free agency in the minor leagues. There was guys like your dad who, if he never got to the big leagues, he was stuck in that organization for his life. I mean, life. You either retired or you just kept going back to the same city. And there was guys back in your dad's day that played 7, 8 years in AAA and never got called up, and that wasn't fair. So it allowed a lot of players, minor league and major league, to move around. The money part of it, I've always said if they didn't have the money to give the players, they wouldn't do it. So they obviously must have it. And why not get as much as you can? I mean, I know you and I would do the same thing. And if I had kids that played ball and were trying to do the same thing, I try to get as much as I could out of the organization as well. So
yeah. Well, and I think today, because the money's so big, your hope, I mean, here's the hope is that the players today, whatever sport it is, NBA, soccer, basketball, football, baseball, whatever sport, you hope that their agent, because, the agent supposedly should have the wisdom to advise their client, hey, you're going to be making millions and millions of dollars here. You can do a lot of good with that. The money, you're going to live very comfortably, but you can do good things with those resources. And, there's a guy that I met, I'll never forget, when I was in training camp with the Raiders back in 1983, and I was walking in the halls, and this guy said, "Hey, Dot, how you doing?" And I didn't know who he was at the time. And I said, "Oh, hi, who are you?" And he said, "Oh, my name's Lee Steinberg." Yeah. And, Lee Steinberg, many of, he now represents Patrick Mahomes, and he's represented, Troy Aikman and all the great, he's the movie Jerry Maguire. He was the advisor, when they were trying to, what's the ideal agent? They used Lee as, he was the advisor on the movie set, Jerry Maguire. Any event, Lee always wanted he always said that if whatever his client, you have to give back to some, organization. And that was always a good thing. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of the players, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the players team up with an agent who's it's just about the money. Let's get the money and run. And money is only as good as what you do with it. So,
Well, yeah, and that reminds me of a story when I worked for the Toronto Blue Jays in spring training in 1983. We had I won't say the name of the pitcher, but the pitcher was negotiating a new contract with Pat Gillick, and Pat brought me in, and I was involved in the negotiations at a young age, so I got some experience doing that. But the pitcher's agent stole all his money, and he needed to sign a new contract. Toronto, feeling that they kind of were responsible because they dealt with the agent, got this player to get a new agent or person. And the person actually ended up getting his history teacher, who was very instrumental in him becoming an athlete. We flew him from California to Dunedin, Florida. We sat down and he drafted a scenario where this guy would have a lifetime contract because he didn't think he could handle the millions of dollars we were about to give him. And it was basically the greatest contract ever for that player, because he then gets money every year from now until I think it ends in 2050. And instead of getting it all in that 1 or 2 years and having an agent say he's investing it into things that never came about, he got a lifetime contract. So he was given basically an allowance, and he's doing very well today. And
what a great story.
So yeah, you see the good and the bad of agents. Not all agents are like that, but you hear a lot of stories, especially in baseball, where the money's guaranteed, and it's a lot of it where that happens. I know Dave Bergman, who played in Houston, played for Syracuse, and then went on to play for Houston and the Tigers. Actually had a bad experience with an agent where he was broke after a few years, and then went back into baseball, and then started his own business when he got out, advising players like Cecil Fielder, who he played with the Tigers and played in Syracuse, how to manage your money. And had a very successful business advising players of how to select an agent and do things like that. So,
well, it's interesting. You talk about advising people with their money. I actually, I'm going to put up here a little banner, because there's well, actually, I'm not going to do that until I get it to you, because that's something that this show, it starts with, it's little text on the dot. So I'm going to get you this link, and it's basically educating people on Bitcoin and how you become your own bank. You take personal responsibility for your own finances. So I'm going to get you that, and
okay.
And that's actually a good time to just take a quick commercial break. We're gonna and we've got a new, well, it's a product that I've been on for almost a year. It's called Zip Slim. The company's Beyond Slim, and I got on the scales the other day and I was at 202. So I'm only 3 pounds from 199, and I haven't been 199 in 25 years or something like that. And I want to thank you, John, because John, and let's talk a little bit about your son. I'd love for you to share the story, because you are now a new Beyond Slim team member. And I'm going to flash your link down below. But tell us about, what your Alex. Let's talk about Alex. I mean, he's one of the top, what we call trainers, athletic trainers. Is that what would you call him? A trainer?
Yes. Yep.
Athletic trainer. In baseball, he works with the best. Why don't you talk about Alex and the walk that you took with him and share with our audience?
Well, that walk was interesting. He came home at Easter and had a walk with me and said, he wanted to make sure that I was around for when he got married and had children, and he better start losing some weight and getting in shape. So he got me started about a month and maybe 2 months ago now, walking, probably about 15 to 20,000 steps a day, eating a lot better, not eating late, and then doing little things like which you're promoting here helps you because obesity is a big cause of diabetes, and and high blood pressure and all the things that as you get older, your doctor tells you got to get under control. So, but Alex is an athletic, sports and athletic trainer. He trains professional baseball players, college baseball players, and a lot of high school players in the Austin, Texas area. And we discussed, we'll probably get him on the show at some point in the next month or so. But he was that pudgy little kid who couldn't run down the bases, and loved baseball, wanted to play, and I think I had that same discussion with him when he was about 13, 14 years old, when he said, "Hey, you think I'll ever play baseball in high school?" And I said, "Well, you got to lose some weight and get in shape." And he heard it and did it and changed his whole life, and met a trainer here in Syracuse who helped him get started, and then started training players when he played in both high school and college baseball. And he played a little bit of minor league baseball before he got released the last time, and said, I think I'm going to make sports training my career. And he started his own business, moved to Austin, Texas, where a lot of professional players and good players live, and has created a nice little business called Simone Baseball Performance. And he has currently Colin Hollerman, right-handed pitcher with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who's killing it right now, leads the National League in holds as a reliever. Number of AAA guys, number one picks in the draft. We're playing in the lower levels. As you know, the state of Texas is loaded with high school baseball and football players, but it's loaded with guys that all throw between 98 and 100 miles an hour. So he's got the pick of the litter, and got a new gym in Liberty Hill, Texas, and is neighbors with a guy named Trey Hillman, who used to manage in the big leagues with the Kansas City Royals and over in South Korea and Japan. So he's been feeding him some guys, and just a great career he's had so far.
Yes, he has. And I love this StreamYard, because I just popped up there. There's the link. If you want to connect with Alex, if you have a son or a grandson or a relative or a friend that wants to be a better baseball player, SimoneBaseballPerformance.org. And it's exciting because baseball is truly a great game. I was talking to a woman the other day who she said her son is tiny and he loves American football. And I said to him, but he's a good athlete. And I said to her, well, what's his thought about, is he play baseball? And she said, well, yeah, he does, but he loves American football. And I said, well, baseball is the one sport. That's and right. You know this, John, you don't have to be, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you don't have to be, Howie Long, or
that's right.
You can be any size. You can be big, fat, short, tall. What you need in baseball are two things, in my opinion. This right here, the heart. That's right. And the mind. And you probably have some stories, John, about a guy who you'd say, oh, there's no way. There's no way he's going to make it. But he had that heart, and he worked in his mind, and he made the major leagues. I'm sure you have some stories.
Well, yeah, mental is key. And I know Alex, my son, says that he has a number of guys that a lot of times they don't succeed because of what's between their heads, and especially pitchers. You played baseball, so you could get to a pitcher very easily. And I saw that, growing up, sitting in a dugout. I can tell you stories of how pitchers on the mound used to cry from what the things that came out of the visiting dugout. So you can get under somebody's skin real easy and change the game, change the way the guy pitches. And you have to be strong mentally. That's why guys like Roger Clemens and Dave Stewart, who played in Oakland, they were just tough guys that you couldn't rattle, and they were successful. But baseball, there's a number of guys I can just think off the top of my head, especially in the Yankee era when I was growing up, that they were number one picks, and then they got to Syracuse, and you knew why they weren't going to make it. And it was usually an excuse about something. And I can tell you, we had a pitcher in the Blue Jay organization who got called up. We got him to the airport, sent him to St. Louis, No, Kansas City. I'm sorry. It's Kansas City. It was during the Blue Jays, and he missed his connection in St. Louis. Got on the plane back to Syracuse. Toronto called me and said, "Where's this guy? You sent him, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah, we sent him. I don't know." So we called him up. This was before cell phones and all the ways you can communicate. And I said, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm back in Syracuse. The flight got canceled." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I could have got you on another flight, but you're pitching like tonight in Kansas City." He goes, "Well, I'm back in Syracuse. What should I do?" I go, "It doesn't sound like you really want to pitch in the big leagues, kid." And Toronto called another guy up, and the guy never made it to the big leagues.
Wow.
So that told me, and it told Toronto, that he was afraid to pitch in the big leagues, and you come across that a lot. And some guys back in the day would have arm injuries and didn't want to go that next step because they thought the arm would fail them, and they would never throw 100%. They would throw 80, 90% because they thought it would stop or they wouldn't work, and they were never the same again, and they wondered why they never got back to the big league. So but that was different before surgeries are the way they now are, and training is key, and that's why Alex gets into training his athletes. He prides himself on making sure when his athletes go to spring training, they're not going to get injured. He has a program for them during the season where they're not going to get injured. And unfortunately, a lot of players, as you see, especially with the Yankees, guys are hurt every week. And, to me, the most important thing is making sure your athlete is ready to play a 162 game season.
Yeah. And so if you are a Yankee fan out there watching this and you want your Yankees to win a championship,
hire Alex Simone.
Exactly. And there's the link right there. So, I believe we're only 1 or 2 degrees from anybody. And George Steinbrenner's son, someone knows someone that knows him will listen to this. Tell him about Alex Simone and tell him you heard about him on Little Text on the Dot.
Yeah, he's going to get ticked at us. You know that, don't you?
Oh, it's okay. Hey, you know what? That's what we do those things. So
that's right.
Well, I'm just going to, now one of the things is, on the dot is you get the last word and you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm going to flash here the last banner I'm going to put up here. And I don't know if you've actually done it yet, but there it is. It's the zipslim.info/littletex. And you should be able to get to that sometime today or later today, because I know you're doing it, or you may have already done it. But I'm telling you, just a little side story. I have a friend of mine who I played football with. I'm not going to mention his name, but I'm going to send him this link. And he's a good friend. He was a great football player and just tremendous. And I saw him about a month or so ago, and I said, "Oh my gosh, if we don't get the weight off, he's not going to make it." I was thinking to myself, he's not going to make it. And, I shared the Beyond Slim Zip Slim with him because he looked at me and he said, "Gosh, Dot, you look great. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, it's the Zip Slim." And he got on it, and I think he's slowly releasing the weight, and it's so exciting to help someone. Forget about, because we all get rewarded when you share, but that's not, when you get to our age, it's about helping other people. So I'm just so excited. And if anyone struggles with their weight, they can go to this website, zipslim.info/littletex. And it's a great company. But anyway, with that, John, you get the last word, and you can talk. If you want to talk for an hour, you can talk for an hour.
We could, if once we get going.
I guess, talk about whatever you want to talk about. As far as sports right now, NHL, I'm really, I'm pulling now that Edmonton's out. I'm pulling for the Las Vegas Golden Knights because I live in Las Vegas. My good friend, Russ Bourne, who lets me, as America's guest, lets me stay at his place there in Henderson. So I'm cheering for the Golden Knights in an NHL. Basketball, you got to give it to those Denver Nuggets. First time, John, in Denver Nugget history to make the finals.
Yeah, I mean, a team that you usually don't see on TV that much, especially here in the East Coast. And I've watched, all these games that Joker has played, Jokic, and I'm amazed of what a great passer he is. I know he scores 30 points a game and is a big guy and can rebound, but the passing, he's as good as any point guard in the NBA as far as getting guys open and passing. So it's hard to believe that Denver can't beat either Miami or Boston. Obviously, it looks like it's going to be Miami, even though they lost last night. They got to go back to Boston tomorrow night and play. But I think it's Denver's year, and they got the best player, I think, in the NBA right now. And then hockey, Florida and Vegas, looks like it's going to be those two. Looks like it's going to be a sweep in the National Hockey League, and that should be a good series because both teams can score a little bit and have hot goaltenders right now.
And got to say a shout out, congratulations to Brooks Koepka, who, boy, what a great comeback. I mean, a couple years ago, a terrible knee surgery operation. And again, you mentioned it earlier, the technology, the orthopedic surgeons that can repair an arm for a pitcher or a knee on a golfer. Brooks Koepka won the PGA, which is just up the road here in Rochester at Oak Hill. And congratulations to Brooks. And I want to congratulate a woman, and I don't know if you know about this woman, John. She is a golfer at Stanford, and I have her right here. Her name is, you'll know her, you'll get to know her. Her name's Rose Zhang. Have you ever heard that name, John?
No,
Rose Zhang?
unfortunately not.
Well, listen to this. Rose Zhang just won her second consecutive national championship for golf, collegiate championship. She won as a freshman, and now she won as a sophomore. She happens to play at my alma mater, Stanford.
Yep.
And she has just tied Tiger Woods. She's only has 19 starts, and she has 11 wins. And Tiger Woods, who went to Stanford, had 26 starts with 11 wins.
Wow.
There's another golfer named Patrick Rogers, Maverick McNeely, obviously. Tom Watson went to Stanford, and she's passing them all by. So remember that name, Rose Zhang, Zhang, when she hits the LPGA tournament. So you heard it here. So with that, I don't know if there's any other sports going on. Probably soccer. I need to, maybe next week we can talk about soccer. But again, John, you get the last word, and I'm out, brother. And thank you so much for bringing back On the Dot.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and we look forward to getting some guests on. We talked about that, bringing some people on, and there's a lot of people that I still converse with in Major League Baseball and in minor league baseball, and of course, like we talked, hopefully we get my son on. I don't know, after this show, maybe he won't want to join us, but we'll hopefully get him on, talk about some of the techniques he uses in training, and try to have some more stories lined up for you. I know. We talk about it whenever we meet for breakfast once in a while, and there's a number of them that I think will be interesting to people listening.